Hi. Two reasons not to watch this video. Number one, it's me just rambling on a little bit about talking politics with a friend. But number two, there's one or two audio problems, so the audio is not fantastic either. So I'm putting it up here just kind of, for posterity rather than for people to view. So I'll see you on the next video. It'll be more interesting, I promise. So it's Tuesday morning and beautiful day, a bit windy but sunny, and I'm going on a drive down south to see a friend of mine just for a catch-up. And it's one of the joys of retirement where you can get up on a Tuesday morning, not worry about the rush hour or going to work. You just go and do stuff that you feel like doing. It's kind of fun. So I'm seeing this old friend of mine today. We're going to have a good chin wag. Today is one of those days. So I'm off to see a friend I've known for about 20 odd years. He's a music lover, but his vinyl days are long gone. He went through a CD phase for many years, and now he has one of these Sonos systems or something, Sonos, and he streams exclusively. So I think there might have been a time when I could have rifled through his CD collection, but now he's got infinite choice, and so it's kind of hard to give recommendations to people or take recommendations because there's just so many choices available, too many choices. And the reason why I don't stream, I went through my own phase of where I was on Spotify for years. I used to pay a monthly fee for the superior audio experience, and then music became like wallpaper to me, and I thought, that's it, I'm back to CDs, and most importantly, I was back to vinyl. Anyway, we talk about music, but we also talk, more importantly, about politics, current affairs, and we've had excuse me, we've had an interesting relationship over the years, where I think that we've taken positions on political matters that have resulted in us, having bust-ups. It's just, but I think the way things have evolved over the years is that we are, I think, now in a position where both of us, when we're together and talking about these issues, our priority is to listen, which is really strange. It's when in politics, when we all talk politics to our friends and family, usually people take entrenched positions and then trying to defend those positions with great vigor, and then you have bust-ups and so on. But we are both better now at listening, and what that's encouraged us to do is to kind of formulate our arguments with more care, and we speak more slowly, we test understanding, and we explore both sides of the argument. Now, there is a caveat on this, and that for me, well, no, let's talk about him for a second. He's a supporter of the Labour Party. He's a campaigner for the Labour Party. So he's got socialist views. Perfectly legit, that's fine. My approach is different. I'm not diametrically opposed to him because I've got a lot of sympathies with the arguments that he puts. But I'm definitely a floating voter. I've voted for all the major parties over the years, and I think that in most elections, all but two elections in my adult lifetime, I have voted for the losing side, which is frustrating at times, but actually I think it's, for me, it's proven to be a good thing because it means I can always complain about the government because I didn't put them in. So I, as I say, as a floating voter, we end up having these very interesting conversations, and he's stopped trying to persuade me to think one way or the other, and I've done the same to him. It's more now about our discussions are about the practicalities of policy execution, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I don't have a lot of time for politicians these days. For a start, they are, and most importantly, I think, they're not experts. I've got disdain for experts as well, but that's another story. I'll come back to that perhaps. But the politicians are generalists. They are not specialists. So they have to be very, very adaptable. They have to be able to quickly understand issues in order to then either, well, formulate policy around those issues and then express opinions in the media and amongst themselves in debates to try and bolster their policy making. Now, maybe it's always been like this, but it feels to me as that since 2020, when a lot of us became red-pilled, that the competence of that generalist approach to policy making, the consequence of it, and the competence in formulating policy and executing it, has just been there's been more and more evidence that it just, as a system, it just does not work effectively. So I have, unlike this friend of mine who will support a political party and politicians within that party, with a view that they won't get everything right, but they'll generally move the dial in the right direction. That's not enough for me anymore. So I want to hear specifics, and I'm my corporate career taught me a lot about how easy it was for people to gain recognition and status from launching policies or new procedures, new initiatives, new projects, and the hard yards were put in by people who had to overcome the difficulties in executing those policies, and they didn't get the credit. So I've got some experience firsthand of that, but I'm now so much more skeptical about the not necessarily the intentions of politicians, but the ability for them to do what they say they want to do. And so I'm much more focused these days on the nuts and bolts of policy and about how can we make sure that it has the impact that it was intended to have, and of course that impact is positive. So I guess that's the difference where we've diverged, not necessarily on political grounds, but on the expectations each of us have about whether not relying on politicians, but looking to politicians to fix societal problems, whether that's a good thing or not. He would say on balance it probably is. I would say much less so. I think one of the things that we do is, when it comes to politics, is we look for a tribe we want to belong to, and that it's hard for each of us to evaluate the pros and cons of policies, or even a basket of policies. The world is so much more complicated, and so what we do is we end up generally supporting that basket of policies that are proposed by one party or the other. And we use that as a kind of a shorthand for then taking a positions when issues emerge. Like in 2024, the big argument about gender, the arguments about immigration, and so on and so forth. Very, very few people are well informed about the pros and cons and the issues surrounding those things. but they feel that it's important to take some sort of a position, and especially if you're in an environment where these issues are routinely discussed, or they affect policy, such as in corporate these days. You've got the DEI initiative that's spreading like a virus through corporate, as becoming mainstream, and being pushed. There's pushback against that in various quarters. But in those sort of environments, then people have to take a position. And one of the things I've realized now as I get older is that I know nothing really. I mean, I used to think that if I took a position on one thing or another, and supported one party or another, and as I say, I've been there, that was enough. But the reason why the way society works today, it's not it's effectively the result of millions of or billions of individual decisions that have been taken over thousands of years. Little tweaks here and there, the occasional radical shift, testing new policies on new way of doing things, finding that they don't work as planned, so there's modifications to those, and then society is weaving its way through history to create the hyper complex world that we live in today. And when I hear activists or political party affiliates saying, here's a blueprint for how we need to radically transform society and do things very differently, I just don't believe it. I simply don't believe it. It's life and society is infinitely more complex than any great 100-page, 1,000-page, million-page document can lay out as the blueprint for how we should be doing things. I think I've heard it said that the people who are most effective at implementation, they do A/B testing. They test one way of doing things, they check for the results of that, the impact of that, and then they evaluate that, and then they make modifications and then test again, the B version. And it's a bit like the in quality, it's the plan, do, study, act cycle that goes on. So anybody who comes up with this idea is that we have to transform society, and here's the blueprint for doing so, the simple solutions written on the back of one piece of paper. I'm sorry, I just don't accept that as a working proposition. This has led me to accept that there are no simple decisions that are made. And when I hear politicians talk about having to make difficult decisions, it just kind of makes me laugh. No. Society or life in general is about trade-offs. There is no one perfect way of doing things. Something always has to give. Something has to be traded off in order to nudge one's life or society in a direction that you have a preference for. And so when you talk about things about immigration, for example, there are arguments on one side talking about multiculturalism, bringing in new talent, a youthful workforce, new ideas, new way of doing things, the general evolution of society, and that just like I said before, just about A/B testing, about one way of doing things, maybe there is a modification that we can make, and that can be influenced by people who come from outside the existing community. But the trade-offs are, to what extent are these new arrivals positive economic impact on the country? What services do they require? Do they create capacity issues or demand issues around health, schooling, housing, and workforce planning? So, and there are good arguments on both sides. So there's no simple solution to all of that. You just have to kind of, on balance, trade things off, and then think, well, look, I'm even reluctant to say there is a net benefit or a net gain, because it's just, these things are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to measure. So it's kind of the balance of probabilities more like, really. So trade-offs. So I think that's led me to be more open to ideas from different perspectives. And the good thing about this friend of mine that we're spending time together today is that he has been a great listener. So he asks interesting questions, that opens up discussions, that takes the conversation in one direction or a different direction. And he and I have trained ourselves to be much better listeners with each other. And so we can explore these ideas with kind of more rigor and less passion. And I think that puts us in a good place. That's why these discussions with this friend of mine it's always, it's kind of, I learn something, of course, but it's also kind of nourishing. It's like you kind of thrash out ideas with each other, and I feel as though that I take my understanding or even wisdom on a step after we spent some time together. So I'm looking forward to today. You can see over there, you probably can't, but it's the Malvern Hills in Worcestershire, and I went hiking on there for a couple of days with some friends just a short while ago, on a rainy and blustery trip that was, but it's a little bit better today. You can't really see it so much on the motorway here.